Welcome to the Board Game Network. I'm going to be explaining today how to play this game called T.I.M.E Stories. And I'm just going to give you a brief overview because I don't want to get too deep, because this is a storytelling game that if I tell you too much about the story, then you'll know some stuff maybe you shouldn't know. So I will give you the how to play, but not really too deep into the story. And this is a cooperative game, so you work together as teammates, and it's 2 to 4 players, and it plays in about 90 minutes. It's a campaign style game where you play the game over and over again, and that game takes approximately 90 minutes. If you play 2 players, it suggests you go ahead and take a third role and then play that third role together and just kind of cooperate on how the third player plays, so you're playing at least 3 players. Each of you chooses a receptacle. Let me show you what I got out here. Here's the board, and here's your player markers here, and then this is what you keep in front of you to show which color you are playing. So this will go out here, and you'll put it in front of a card showing which card you move to, and then this one's just sitting in front of you. You start with a time unit token, and you're going to start that on 25. If you're playing 2 players, you're starting on 30 though. You just separate some shields out. These skull shields have just blanks on the back, so some of them are blanks, some are skulls, and so forth. You just separate those out. You have your deck of cards here, and what you're going to do is you're going to put your base here on the A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. And your A card always tells you how many cards are in your scenario here. So you lay those out, and you can see what you're seeing as players. And so you move your markers here based on which space you want to move to and encounter that card. You've got items here. So those go up here. You got plans, which are your blueprints. And you're just going to set those up here, and that shows your location. And the different rooms you can move to. You got mission success and mission failure cards, which you don't read. Those sit right there until you're asked to read them. Here's your different receptacles. Receptacles are the players you play. You actually, this is not you. You get inserted into the receptacle, and if the receptacle dies, it can come back later. Or you can come back between runs, what's called runs. When you play it today and you fail, you can play it again tomorrow, but you use different receptacles. Or you can use whichever receptacles you want. Play the same ones again or play different ones. And then you've got a reference card, and then the rest of the deck just sits here waiting for you to reference based on all the stuff you find out. And if you look over here on the left tells you the locations, so you can, without really looking at the cards, scan through this. If you go to the kitchen, you can dig through this and find the kitchen cards, and then which cards go with the kitchen. You lay those out just like you laid these out, A, B, C, D. So here's your receptacles. You're going to dig through those. They all have different attributes here, and they all have different weaknesses or different abilities, and some of these are really kind of strange, let me tell you. Okay, so when you go to a new location, here's your starting location, the base. You're going to read the A card, and then that goes and gives you a little idea on what's going on at that location. So if you go to the kitchen, you're going to pick these up. You're going to put the kitchen out here. You're going to flip over A and then read A. And then once you do that, then you go into the location. Okay? To explore the location, you're going to move your markers. You can all move to the same space or move to different spaces throughout here. There are what's called sealed cards, and I have some examples up here. And these have state tokens on them, which are these. I just have a few of these sitting out here. But they all have different colors and different shapes of squares and rectangles and stuff on them. So for me to go to this location, if this was setting here, for me to go there, I would have to already have this state token. And this state token, once a state token has been picked up by your group, it's available for everybody. It just gets put out here and it stays there for the rest of the run. So you can pick those up as items throughout, and when you find things throughout the locations, you might pick up one of those state tokens, so you just set it there, and then later on you may find a room that needs that state token before you can go enter that room. Once you go to a location and you pick that location up, whoever's there gets to read the card. The other players don't really get to read the card, but you have telepathy, so you can explain what's on that card to somebody without really reading it to them. It encourages you not to read it, but just to explain the gist, the summary of it. Once you go into a location and you read it, if you decide to enter the location, then it costs you 1 time unit. And that's for everybody to do their one thing. So, you know, blue's going to read this one, green and yellow is going to read this one, pink's going to read this one. They flip them over, they read them. And then that costs 1 time unit if they decide to go into that location. If you look at your receptacles, there are characteristics or traits here. And they've got a number by them, and that's how many die you get to roll for that. And so what happens is you will encounter some monster, some animal, some person that you have to fight or have some kind of encounter with, and it will ask you to encounter them with this characteristic. And so you need to roll this many dice that's shown on your characteristic here. So like this green one here, this green icon says 3, so you'd roll 3 of these dice. And stars are a hit. So there's some sides with 2 stars, there's a blank side, and there's a skull side. So here is just an example here. I'm covering up this card so you don't see it, but here's an example of something you have to fight. And so if that was down here, you flip that over, and then you put as many shields down here as what's on here from left to right. This one only shows the skull shields, but there might be more than skull shields. There might be blank shields or some other kind of shield. And you put them on here left to right, and then when you roll and you roll hits, you remove them from left to right over here. You don't get to pick which ones come off. Now, what's called riposte happens sometimes. If there's a skull shield here, and you actually roll a skull on your die, what happens is once any hits have been removed from the shields, you're going to add the number of skull shields plus the number of skulls on your die and compare that to the shields on your receptacle, and if your shields are equal to or greater, nothing happens. But if your shields are less than, then you're going to lose 1 life point. And that's the heart here. So at the beginning of the game, you're just going to grab some heart tokens and set them on here. So when you lose one, you take it off. So it depends on what kind of trait that you're encountering the person with. You'll notice there's different ones on these different receptacles. You can also move your pawn to a different location or a different place at the location, or you can choose to do nothing. So that's usually a bad thing to do, like when you're encountering something. And you'll notice also this card has a lock on it, which means it's a trap and you cannot leave that location until you've defeated that card. So if this person, whoever is there, can't defeat it, then everybody else needs to get moved over there so that somebody can get in there and defeat that card so that you can leave. When you do a new location, when you change locations, you're just going to pick up these cards. Make sure you put them back in the same order. A, B, C, D, and just throw those on the bottom of the deck. You're going to move your token here that represents your group. You're going to move them to whatever new location you want to move to. You are going to roll the captain die, and this captain die has 1, 2, and 3 symbols on it, and that represents how many time units it costs you to go to that location. So you want to go as slow as possible. Use as few time unit locations, temporal unit locations as you can, because if you get down to 0, then you lose the game because you haven't completed it by the time you run out of time. If the location is written in red, it actually costs you 2 extra temporal units to move away from there. So usually it's from some underground or some hard place to get out of, so it actually costs you extra to move away. If you ever get to one of these tests that I showed you about, like this, and you leave it before you've defeated it, it resets. So you got to make sure you defeat it if you're going to, instead of leaving it and coming back to it, because then it's reset to its full strength. If at the end of a die roll there's any of these left, a heart, or the heart means that you lose a life point for every heart that's there. One of these is you lose a time unit, temporal unit for every one of those that's there. This is based on something that tells you about in the game. If you've got multiple units fighting the same person, then they happen one at a time. So one goes, and then another goes, and another goes. And anytime you do this moving around and encountering the space, you get to do it in whatever order you want to. You actually get to flip up the card, read the cards. Everybody gets to read their cards, and then you get to decide who's going first, who's going second, that kind of thing. So like if 2 or 3 people are encountering one beast or one something here, you can look at, see who's the strongest and say, well, let's let him go first, or the one who has the most life points, let's make sure he goes first so he's less likely to die. Something like that. If you die during an encounter, so your life points go down to 0, what happens is you die, but you're actually not really dead. Your receptacle just comes back, and it comes back 7 units later. So you're going to take, if you're green and you die and you're at 25 time units, you're going to come back at 18. So when this gets down to here, you actually get to come back on the board. Now you still get to participate and help make decisions and stuff, but your receptacle is not active anymore. Some of your items actually have a logo on them, and that logo means that they stay out from run to run. Once you found it, and what I've noticed is a lot of them are map. Some of these maps get replaced here, and you might have a logo on it. And so if that's the case, and you fail, and you come back and you try again, that piece of the map stays out, so you don't have to go find it again. So when a mission success would happen when you're playing the game and it tells you to read the mission success card. A mission failure happens if you get your time unit token down to 0, or if all agents that are playing are dead, or if the scenario specifically states that you failed the mission. Now here are your tests that happen to get in there. I said something about this one. This one actually shows 3 different state tokens that you have to get into this one. But this one shows the 4 of these things sitting there, and what that means is everybody who's playing has to be in the same location, plus you need this state token to flip that card over. So it doesn't matter how many people are playing, everybody who's playing or everybody who's alive has to go to that card to flip the card over and read it. Here's the different icons. Here's a deafness, a glibness, a combat strength, all kinds of different stuff. So that is how you play T.I.M.E Stories, and I'm not going to get into the story because that would be cheating, and I don't want you to cheat. I want to give you just enough of a taste so that you know whether this is a game for you and if you want to go out and buy it. So make sure you tune into all of our videos here at the Board Game Network so you can learn how to play these games and know which ones you'll like before you go to the store and you got your shopping list ready. Thank you for watching.